blue lights came on just as Camille Reeves turned off Interstate 81 and onto a two-lane road outside Fairbrook, Virginia. She checked the mirror, eased her dark sedan onto the shoulder, and stopped beside a field gone brown from the late summer heat. The patrol car settled behind her at an angle, close enough that its headlights filled her cabin. Camille placed both hands on the wheel and waited. Officer Brett Nolan approached on the driver's side. He was broad through the shoulders, mid-30s, with a clipped mustache and a body camera centered on his vest. He did not greet her license. Registration. Camille lowered the window another inch. "What was the reason for the stop, officer?" "I'll tell you after I see your documents." She looked at him for a beat, then reached toward the center console after telling him exactly what she was doing. Her license and registration were already together. Nolan took both, glanced at her photograph, and then looked past her at the leather interior. "This your car? The registration is in your hand." "That's not what I asked." "Yes, it's mine." His flashlight moved over the passenger seat, where a paper bag from Officer sat beside a folded cardigan. Camille had picked up blood pressure medication for her father before leaving Washington. She was already 20 minutes later than she had promised him. He hated waiting for people since the stroke because he could no longer drive himself anywhere. Nolan tapped the roof with 2 fingers. "Stay in the vehicle." He walked back to his cruiser without explaining the stop. Camille watched him in the mirror. She had spent enough years around law enforcement to recognize the difference between routine and fishing. Nolan was not checking her paperwork yet. He was on his phone. Inside the patrol car, Nolan called his shift lieutenant before touching the computer. "Victor, I've got a DC plate on Mill Creek Road." Black female expensive car acting lawyered up. The voice on the other end asked whether he had a violation. "Failure to maintain lane, maybe more." "More what?" Nolan looked toward Camille's sedan. "I'll know in a minute." He ended the call, then ran her plate. The registration came back clean. So did her license. No warrants, no suspended status, no stolen vehicle notice. Nothing that justified the picture Nolan had already formed. He stared at the screen, jaw working once, then stepped back into the road. Camille saw him coming and made a choice she would question later. She did not reach for the credential case inside her purse. She was off duty. She was on a personal trip. The stop had nothing to do with her office, and she refused to teach another officer that basic courtesy depended on the title printed beneath her name. Nolan stopped at the window. "Where are you headed?" "To my father's house." "Where's that?" "In Fairbrook." "You from around here?" "No." "That's obvious." Camille's eyes stayed on him. "What was the traffic violation?" "You crossed the center line back near the feed store." "There wasn't oncoming traffic." "I didn't say there was."
"I'm asking because you followed me for almost 4 miles before activating your lights."
Nolan's expression tightened. "You keeping track of me?" "I noticed a patrol car behind me." He leaned closer to the window. "Step out." Camille did not move. "Am I being sighted?" "I gave you an order." "For what purpose?" Nolan's hand rested on the top edge of her door.
"Ma'am, don't turn a warning into a problem." That phrase told her more than the answer would have.
He had just described the stop as something that could have ended with a warning, yet he was now ordering her out after finding nothing wrong with her documents. Camille unbuckled her seatbelt. "I'm complying. I want that clear." "Good. Then we won't have trouble." She opened the door and stepped onto the gravel shoulder. Nolan directed her toward the front of the sedan. A warm wind moved through the weeds along the ditch. The body camera on his chest still showed a small red light. Camille glanced at it once. Nolan noticed. "Something interesting?" "Just making sure the stop is being documented."
"You worried about documentation?"
"I'm worried about accuracy." He gave a short laugh with no humor in it.
"You really are a lawyer, aren't you?"
Camille did not answer. A second patrol car arrived from the opposite direction. Officer Dana Cole stepped out, younger than Nolan by at least 10 years. She walked over while fastening the strap on her vest. "What we got?" she asked. Nolan answered before Camille could speak. "Possible impaired driver." She crossed the center line twice and got argumentative when I stopped her. Dana looked at Camille, then at the sedan. "You run her?" "Clean." Camille turned her head slightly toward Nolan. "You told me I crossed the center line once." He looked at her. "Excuse me, you just told Officer Cole I crossed it twice." Dana's eyes moved between them. Nolan's voice flattened. "You want to stand here correcting me, or you want to cooperate?" "I am cooperating." "Then stop interrupting." Camille said nothing else. Dana asked, "You do field sobriety yet?" "No." "She's not showing impairment." It was the first statement Nolan had made that narrowed the situation instead of expanding it. Dana seemed to notice that too, so what do you need me for? Nolan's gaze dropped toward the passenger side of Camille's car.
I saw something in plain view.
Camille followed his eyes to the pharmacy bag. Nolan walked around the hood and pointed through the passenger window. That prescription yours? It belongs to my father. Name on it match yours? No, there we go. Camille's mouth tightened.
There we go what? Controlled medication in your vehicle. Prescribed to someone else.
It's blood pressure medication from a pharmacy. I picked it up for my father. You got proof of that? The receipt is in the bag. Nolan looked at Dana. Now we have probable cause. Dana did not move. For a pharmacy bag? For possession. Camille turned toward her. Officer Cole, please leave your camera running. Nolan stepped between them. Don't give my officer instructions. I asked her not to turn off a recording. You don't manage my scene. Then manage it correctly. The words came out sharper than Camille intended. Nolan's face changed. That was her mistake. Not because she was wrong, but because she had finally given his pride something it could call defiance. He opened the passenger door. Camille moved one step forward. Dana lifted a hand, not touching her, but making the boundary clear. I do not consent to a search, Camille said. Nolan reached for the pharmacy bag. Noted. Then stop. He opened the bag, removed the stapled receipt, and read the name on the label. Samuel Reeves, my father. Could be anybody. The address is 5 miles from here. Nolan checked the label and paused. Dana leaned closer. It is Fairbrook. Nolan shoved the bottle back into the bag. For half a second, Camille thought the obvious answer might finally end the stop. Instead, he looked at the glove compartment. What else are you carrying? Camille's voice dropped. You have verified the medication. Close my car. Nolan pulled the glove compartment open. Dana said Brett. He ignored her. Camille looked directly at Dana. Is your supervisor on the way? Dana hesitated. Lieutenant Shaw is coming. Nolan turned around. I didn't ask you to tell her that. Dana's shoulders stiffened, she asked. And I'm running the stop. Camille watched the exchange. The younger officer had not challenged him, but she had stopped mirroring his confidence. That mattered. Nolan searched the glove box, the door pocket, and the center console. He found insurance papers, charging cables, a pack of guns, and nothing else. Then he saw Camille's purse on the rear floor behind the passenger seat. It was a structured brown leather bag with a brass clasp, expensive but understated. She had placed it there after leaving the pharmacy because the passenger seat was full. Nolan reached for it. Camille's posture changed. Leave the purse where it is. He stopped with his hand on the strap. Why? Because you have no lawful reason to search it. You just got real concerned. I'm concerned because you're searching personal property after the reason you invented disappeared. Nolan pulled the purse out. Dana's eyes narrowed. You sure about that? He looked at her. About what? The bag. You see me asking permission? Camille felt the situation tilt. Not because he had found anything. Because he was now acting for the purpose of proving that his earlier decisions had been justified. That kind of escalation had a logic of its own. A black SUV turned onto the shoulder behind the two cruisers. Lieutenant Victor Shaw stepped out in a white uniform shirt with his sleeves rolled to the forearms. He was in his late 40s, heavyset with the calm face of someone accustomed to being the final word. He walked toward Nolan first. What's the problem? Nolan lowered his voice, but not enough, DC driver. Lane violation, uncooperative, prescription in somebody else's name. She's blocking the search. Shaw looked past him at Camille, then motioned Nolan toward the rear of the first cruiser. Camille could see them talking, but could not hear the words over the passing traffic. Start from the beginning, Shaw said. Nolan gave him the shortest version possible. He left out the clean license check. He left out the pharmacy address. He said Camille had challenged every instruction and kept quoting procedure before he had finished the stop. Shaw watched Dana standing near the passenger door. Cole seeing it the same way. She's new enough to get nervous when somebody sounds educated. That's not what I asked. Nolan's jaw tightened. She saw the prescription. She saw Reeves interfering. Shaw looked toward the red light on Dana's body camera. And your camera running good. Nolan waited. You want me to shut it down? Shaw gave him a flat look. I want you to stop asking questions that sound bad out loud. That was as close as he came to a warning. For a moment, Nolan seemed ready to step back. Then he glanced at Camille again. She was standing exactly where he had placed her, composed, saying nothing to Dana. To Nolan, that restraint did not look like cooperation anymore. It looked like confidence he had not earned the right to understand. She's hiding something, he said. Maybe, Shaw answered. Or maybe you started a stop you haven't finished justifying. Nolan stared at him. Shaw exhaled through his nose. So justify it. Cleanly. The lieutenant walked back toward Camille, believing he had told Nolan to tighten the procedure. Nolan heard something different. He heard permission to keep going as long as he found a reason before the paperwork was finished. Camille said that is not an accurate sequence. Shaw looked at her for the first time. And you are Camille Reeves? I mean, what are you doing here? Trying to get to my father's house. Officer Nolan says you were driving erratically. He first said I crossed the center line once. Then he told Officer Cole twice. He found no impairment. The prescription is my father's, from a pharmacy 5 miles away, with his address printed on the label. Shaw looked at Nolan. Nolan said she's been directing the stop since I walked up. Camille answered before Shaw could. Asking why I was stopped is not directing a stop. Shaw raised one hand. Everybody needs to bring the temperature down. My temperature is fine. I'm speaking to everyone. Then ask him to put my purse back in the car. Shaw looked at the purse in Nolan's hand. That should have been the off-ramp. He could have told Nolan the search had gone far enough. He could have reviewed the body camera, confirmed the prescription, issued a warning, and sent Camille on her way. Instead, Shaw asked, "Why are you so worried about the purse?" Camille stared at him. Dana looked down at the gravel. Nolan's mouth moved in the smallest hint of satisfaction. Camille said, "I'm worried that 2 officers are turning my request to keep private property private into suspicion." Shaw crossed his arms.
If there's nothing illegal inside, we can clear this up quickly.
No, that's not how consent works.
Nolan gave a quiet scoff. There it is again. Camille looked at him. What? The legal lecture. It becomes a legal conversation when you use a badge to search property. Shaw's tone hardened. Miss Reeves, you can cooperate now, or we can handle this another way. Camille considered the credential case inside the purse. One motion would end the performance. She could tell them who she was. She could ask Shaw to call Washington. She could watch the posture change, hear the sudden apologies, and be at her father's house before dinner went cold. She almost did it. Then she looked at Dana's body camera. The red light was still on. Camille thought of every complaint that reached Washington after the damage had already been done. Citizens describing officers who became polite only after a lawyer arrived. Families who could not get records because nobody important had been present. Local departments insisting that ugly encounters were misunderstandings because the paperwork looked clean. She was not in Fairbrook on official business. She had no plan to investigate this department. But she also knew exactly what would happen to the truth of this stop if she pulled rank before Nolan finished showing them who he was. Her flaw had always been believing that a clear record could restrain people who still had a choice. She decided to trust the record one more time. My answer is no, she said. Nolan looked at Shaw. Shaw nodded once. Search it. Dana lifted her head. Lieutenant Shaw turned to her. You have an objection? Dana glanced at Camille. I'm not sure we have enough for the purse. Nolan laughed under his breath. We have suspected possession, inconsistent answers, and active resistance. I haven't resisted anything, Camille said. Shaw pointed at Dana's cruiser.
Go verify the pharmacy information. Dana did not move at first.
Now, officer, she walked away. Nolan unclasped the purse. Camille stayed where she was. Officer Nolan, before you continue, state for your camera that I have not consented. He looked at her. You think saying that over and over changes what I can do?
No, I think it makes what you choose to do clear.
For a second he hesitated. Camille saw it, so did Shaw. Nolan could still put the purse down. Instead, he reached inside. He removed a wallet, keys, a small makeup pouch, reading glasses, and a sealed envelope containing medical forms for her father. He dropped each item onto the hood of Camille's car. Careful with that envelope, Camille said. Why? More government secrets. Medical information. Nolan tossed it beside the wallet. Shaw looked toward the road as a pickup slowed to watch, then continued past. Nolan reached deeper into the purse and found an interior zippered compartment. Open it, Shaw said. Camille's eyes moved to him. You're ordering him to open a closed compartment inside a purse after confirming the medication wasn't suspicious. Shaw's jaw set. I heard you. Good. Nolan tugged the zipper. It caught halfway. He pulled harder. The leather bunched in his fist. Camille stepped forward before she could stop herself. Don't tear my bag. Nolan looked up. Back up. You're damaging my property. Back up now. Shaw moved between them. Camille stopped, but her voice sharpened. Tell him to stop, Shaw said. Officer Nolan is completing the search. The zipper is jammed. Then it'll open. Nolan braced the purse against the hood and pulled the compartment apart with both hands. The stitching gave way with a dry ripping sound. Dana, halfway back from her cruiser with the pharmacy number written on a notepad, stopped walking. Several items fell from the torn lining, a spare key. A folded receipt, a slim dark credential case. It struck the hood, flipped once and opened. Nolan's hand was still wrapped around the torn leather when he looked down. The gold seal of the United States Department of Justice caught the afternoon light. His eyes moved beneath Camille's photograph to the title printed in block letters. Deputy Attorney General. The color drained from his face. Dana reached the front of the car and read it too. Shaw stepped closer, suddenly interested in an item he had just authorized Nolan to expose. Camille did not reach for the credential. Nolan's fingers loosened around her damaged purse. For the first time since the blue lights came on, he had nothing to say. Then Shaw's hand shot out toward the open credential case. Camille's voice stopped him.
Lieutenant, I wouldn't touch that if I were you.
Shaw did not touch the credential. His hand stopped 6 inches above it, fingers still open. Camille held his gaze. That's the first good decision you've made in 10 minutes. Nolan looked from the gold seal to her face. Anybody can buy a badge case online. Camille turned toward him. You tore it out of my purse. That doesn't make it real. No, the verification number does. Dana stepped closer to the hood. She did not touch the case either. Beneath Camille's photograph, the Department of Justice seal and title were clear. A second line carried an employee identification number. Shaw recovered first. Cole stepped back. Dana looked at him.
Lieutenant, we can verify this, I said, step back.
Camille watched his expression instead of his words. The surprise was gone. Something more dangerous had replaced it. Calculation. Shaw pointed toward the credential.
Miss Reeves, did you intentionally conceal your federal position from Officer Nolan?
Camille almost laughed. No, you had identification establishing that position in a closed compartment.
I had my work credential in my purse.
And you repeatedly refused to explain why you were so concerned about us searching it.
I repeatedly told you the search was not justified. Nolan seized the opening. She knew exactly what we were going to find. Camille looked at him. My own identification? You could have shown it at the window.
I gave you my driver's license. That was the identification relevant to a traffic stop.
Shaw's eyes stayed on her. Why didn't you tell him who you were? Because who I am doesn't create probable cause. Dana's mouth tightened as if she was trying not to react. Nolan stepped closer to Camille. You've been playing games from the start. No, officer.
You're embarrassed because the woman you decided was suspicious turned out to have a job you respect more than her rights.
His face hardened, careful. Camille glanced at the torn seam of her purse. You should take your own advice. Nolan moved toward her. Dana stepped between them, not dramatically. Just one pace. But everyone saw it, Brett, she said. He stopped. Shaw looked at Dana. What are you doing? Keeping space. I didn't tell you to. No, you didn't. Camille filed that away. Shaw turned toward Nolan. Go back to your cruiser. Call dispatch. Verify the credential through the appropriate federal contact. Camille said, use the number printed on the card. Shaw looked at her. We know how to verify identification. Do it. Nolan picked up the credential case with 2 fingers. Camille's voice sharpened. You do not have permission to take that. He looked at Shaw. Shaw nodded. Nolan closed the case and walked away with it. Camille stared at the lieutenant. You are seizing federal identification now? We're verifying an item recovered during a lawful search. Recovered? Found you tore open a purse and removed it. Shaw's voice dropped.
Miss Reeves, I suggest you stop trying to control the wording.
That's exactly what this is about now. Dana looked toward Nolan's cruiser. He had not called anyone yet. He was speaking to someone on his personal phone. Camille noticed. So did Dana. Shaw did not turn around. Camille said, Is Officer Nolan verifying the credential with dispatch? Shaw's jaw shifted. He's handling it. That wasn't my question. You're not conducting an investigation.
Then why are your officers acting like subjects of one?
For the first time, Shaw's calm slipped. Enough. Camille said nothing. Shaw walked toward Nolan. Dana remained beside her. For several seconds, neither woman spoke. Then Dana said quietly, The pharmacy confirmed the prescription pickup. Camille looked at her. My father's name and address?
Yes, so the medication issue is over.
Dana glanced toward Shaw and Nolan. It should be. That isn't what I asked. Dana swallowed. No, it isn't over. Camille nodded once. She had hoped the younger officer would understand the difference between observing misconduct and becoming part of it. Now Dana was being forced to decide. At the cruiser, Shaw lowered his voice. "What did you tell Victor?" Nolan looked confused. "You are Victor." Shaw pointed at the phone. "Who are you talking to? My union rep? You called your union rep before federal verification?" Nolan's face tightened. You saw the id. I saw a credential case. So did the camera. Shaw stared at him. Nolan lowered his voice further. "If it's real, she's going to bury me. No, if it's real, your report is going to bury you." Nolan looked toward Camille. She was provoking me. Then right exactly what she did. She interfered. "With what? The search? You searched her purse because she objected to the search. She had someone else's prescription that was verified."
After Shaw rubbed one hand across his mouth, for a moment he looked older. Nolan said, "We need to document aggressive movement when I opened the purse."
Shaw's eyes narrowed. "Did she touch you? No. Did she reach for a weapon? No. Did she threaten you? Not exactly. Then don't invent something stupid enough to be disproved by 3 cameras. Nolan stared at him. "You authorized the search." Shaw's expression went still. There it was. The first crack between them, not morality. Exposure. Shaw looked back toward Camille and Dana. "We need one version of what happened." Nolan nodded. Shaw corrected him.
No, we need one accurate version that doesn't make this worse.
Nolan heard the warning, but he also heard the fear behind it. And fear made him bolder. She used her position without identifying it. She kept implying consequences that can go in. Shaw considered that. "Yes." Nolan's shoulders loosened slightly. She was attempting to influence the stop. "Maybe she threatened me." Shaw looked directly at him. "Don't use that word unless you can quote the threat." Nolan thought. Then he smiled without humor. "She told me to be careful what I put on the record." Shaw remembered hearing something similar himself. That's usable. Neither man noticed Dana watching them in the reflection of the cruiser window. Back beside Camille's car, Dana's body camera continued recording. Camille said nothing. That made Dana more uncomfortable than questions would have. Finally, Dana asked, "Why didn't you show the credential?" Camille looked at her. "You already heard me answer that." "I mean, before he opened the purse. Would it have stopped him?" Dana hesitated. Camille nodded toward Nolan. "He had my clean license. Clean registration. He verified the prescription. He found no impairment." "You questioned the purse search yourself?" Dana looked down. Camille continued. "If the only thing that makes an officer stop is finding out I have a title, then the title becomes part of the problem." Dana met her eyes. "That's easy to say when you have one." Camille absorbed that. It was fair, you're right. Dana looked surprised. Camille continued. "That's the mistake I made." "What mistake?" "I assumed the recording would keep this from getting worse." Dana glanced at her body camera. Camille said, "A camera doesn't make decisions. People do." Shaw returned before Dana could answer her. "Miss Reeves, until your federal identification is verified, you're being temporarily detained." Camille stared at him. "On suspicion of what? Possession of credentials we haven't authenticated, interference with an active traffic investigation, and possible misuse of official identification." "I didn't display the identification. You concealed it." "In my purse. You had multiple opportunities to explain who you were." "You didn't ask." Shaw's voice hardened. "Turn around." Dana looked at him. "Lieutenant. Cole, she hasn't threatened anyone." "This is a temporary detention." Camille held Shaw's eyes. "Are you ordering her to handcuff me?" "Yes." Dana did not move. Nolan came back from the cruiser carrying Camille's credential in a clear plastic evidence sleeve. Camille saw it and almost lost her composure. "You put my government credential in an evidence bag?" Nolan answered preservation. Camille looked at Dana. Officer Cole. Dana's jaw tightened. "Turn around, ma'am." Camille did. The cuffs closed around her wrists. Nolan watched as if something in the scene had finally returned to the shape he wanted. Camille felt the steel settle against her skin. She also felt something else.
Regret, not fear. Regret that she had believed procedure would stop escalation before humiliation became physical.
Dana checked the cuffs.
"Too tight?" "No, Nolan said you can stop treating her like a guest."
Dana looked at him. "I asked a standard question." Shaw interrupted. "Enough." Camille turned her head slightly. "Lieutenant, I want the exact time recorded." Shaw stared at her. "The time of the handcuffing." Dana looked at her watch. 4:42, Camille repeated it once. 4:42. Nolan shook his head. "Still making your little record?" Camille looked over her shoulder. "No, you are." That silenced him for exactly 3 seconds. Then Shaw opened the rear door of Dana's cruiser. We're moving this to the station. Camille said, have you verified my credential? We're working on it.
You're transporting me before verification. We're not doing this on the shoulder.
You could release me on the shoulder. Shaw's face hardened. Get in the car, Camille looked at Dana. Dana did not speak. Camille got in, the door closed. That was the midpoint when the stop stopped being a bad decision and became an institutional one. At the Fairbrook station, Camille was brought through a side entrance instead of the public lobby. Dana walked beside her. Nolan carried the torn purse and credential bag. Shaw went ahead. Camille noticed the building was small. One booking desk, 2 interview rooms, a hallway toward administrative offices. No crowd, no reporters, no dramatic rescue waiting behind glass doors. That was good. She did not want rescue. She wanted a record nobody could later rewrite. At booking, a desk officer looked at the credential bag. His eyebrows rose. Shaw spoke before he could ask. Unverified federal identification, keep it separate. Camille said, it is not unverified because nobody has attempted proper verification. Shaw ignored her. Property inventory. Nolan emptied the rest of her purse onto a stainless steel counter. Camille watched every item. Wallet. The desk officer wrote.
Keys. He wrote medical paperwork. He wrote cosmetic.
He wrote. Nolan held up her personal phone.
Camille said that stays sealed. Shaw turned. Everything stays sealed. No biometric access, no passcode requests noted. Nolan gave a quiet laugh. You think we're scared to touch your phone? Camille looked at him. I think you should be. Shaw stepped forward. There. Again, Camille looked at him. What? The implied threat? That was legal advice. You're using your office to intimidate officers. My office has done nothing. You made sure we saw the title. Nolan ripped open my purse. The desk officer stopped writing for half a second. Shaw noticed. Keep moving. Camille did not miss that either. Nolan lifted the torn bag. Damaged purse. Camille said damaged by Officer Nolan during the search. The desk officer looked at Shaw. Shaw said just write damaged purse. Camille's voice stayed calm. No, write how it was damaged. Shaw stared at her, the room held. Dana said it tore during Officer Nolan's search. Nolan looked at her. Seriously? Dana did not look away. You tore it. Shaw's eyes moved between them. Coal hallway. Dana followed him out. Camille could not hear every word through the glass, but she saw enough. Shaw pointed toward the booking area. Dana shook her head. He leaned closer. She folded her arms. Then Shaw's voice carried through the door.
I'm asking whether you're part of this department or part of her defense team.
Dana answered clearly. I'm part of the report. Camille looked down at the counter. That was the first relationship in the room to change. Shaw came back alone. Dana remained outside. Nolan said, what's her problem? Shaw ignored him. Put Miss Reeves in interview too. Camille was uncuffed inside the room. A camera sat high in one corner. She looked at it, recording. Shaw answered yes. Continuous? Camille sat. Nolan remained standing. Shaw placed a printed form on the table. This is a statement of events. Read it. If there are corrections, mark them. Camille picked it. The first paragraph described a lane violation. The second described an uncooperative driver who questioned repeated commands. The third described medication belonging to a third party. The fourth said Nolan developed concern that Camille might be concealing evidence after she became visibly agitated when he approached her purse. Camille looked up. Who wrote this? Shaw said. It's preliminary. Who wrote it? Nolan provided the facts. Nolan wrote that I became visibly agitated. You did. Camille turned to him. Describe it. Nolan crossed his arms. You stepped toward me when you began tearing my purse. You raised your voice, I said. Don't tear my bag. Shaw said, that's enough. No, it isn't. Camille slid the statement back. You want my corrections? Yes. Delete the word agitated. Add that Officer Cole questioned the legal basis for the purse search.
Add that the pharmacy confirmed the prescription belonged to my father.
Add that the credential was discovered only after Officer Nolan physically tore an interior seam. Nolan laughed. You want us to write your defense for you? I want you to stop writing fiction. Shaw leaned forward. You're making this worse for yourself. Camille looked at him. Show me the crime I'm making worse. The question landed badly because Shaw still did not have one. He collected the paper. We're verifying your position.
You've been saying that for almost an hour. Federal offices don't answer every local call instantly.
Camille looked at the wall clock. Which number did you call? Shaw paused. Nolan answered. The main Justice Department line. Camille looked at him. The credential has a verification number printed on the reverse. Nolan said nothing. You never called it. Shaw cut in.
We're not taking instructions from a detainee about investigative procedure.
Camille leaned back. No, you're avoiding the procedure that would give you an answer. Shaw stood. Interview over for now. He left with Nolan. Camille sat alone. For the first time all day, nobody was talking at her. She looked at the camera, then at the clock. 5:28. Her father had probably called twice by now. That thought hit harder than the cuffs. He had spent the last year pretending the stroke had changed nothing. He hated asking for help. Hated when Camille rearranged work to take him to appointments. Hated the silence that followed whenever he forgot a word. She had promised him dinner. Now he would think she had chosen Washington over him again. That was the cost of her decision nobody in the station could see. Camille pressed her palms against the table. For several seconds, she questioned whether refusing to show the credential earlier had been principle or pride. Then the door opened. Dana stepped inside. She closed it behind her. Camille looked at the camera. Dana said, "It's still recording." Good. Dana sat across from her. "You were right about the verification number." Camille waited. Dana continued, "I called it. On whose instruction?" "Nobody's. That mattered." "What did they say?" "They asked for the employee number and a security code on the back. Then they transferred me to a duty officer." Camille's posture changed. "Did you identify the reason for the call?" "Yes." "What exactly did you say?" Dana looked toward the camera. "That your credential had been recovered during a roadside detention, and the lieutenant wanted authentication." Camille's jaw tightened. "And they confirmed the credential is valid." Camille did not react. Dana continued. "They wouldn't discuss your schedule, travel or duties." "They shouldn't. They asked whether you were safe." Camille looked at her. "What did you say?" Dana hesitated. "I said you were in our interview room and not injured." "Did they ask whether I was under arrest?" "Yes." "And?" "I said Lieutenant Shaw called it a temporary detention." Camille looked at the clock again. "What happened next?" "They asked to speak with you." "Where's the phone?" Dana shook her head. "Shaw took it." Camille stared at her. "He took your phone?" "He walked in during the call." "What did he tell them?" Dana's face tightened. "He said the department was investigating possible misuse of federal credentials, and that all communication would go through him." Camille closed her eyes for 1 second. When she opened them, Dana was watching her. "That was another mistake." Dana nodded.
Why are you telling me? Because he told me to leave the verification out of my supplemental report until he decides how to classify the stop.
Camille said nothing. Dana continued.
"And Nolan wants me to write that you lunged toward him when he opened the purse."
"Did I? No, then don't write it." Dana's eyes flashed. "You think it's that simple?" "No." That answer stopped her. Camille leaned forward. "I think it's going to cost you something." Dana looked away. Camille continued. "But I can't make that choice cheaper." Dana stood. For a moment, Camille thought she was leaving. Then Dana reached into her vest pocket and placed a blank sheet of paper on the table. "I need your work verification number again." Camille has studied her. "It's on the credential." Shaw has the credential locked in his office.
"Why do you need the number?"
Dana looked toward the camera. "Because the duty officer asked for a callback. Camille did not provide it immediately."
"Officer Cole, if you make that call, give them only what you
Personally observed." Dana nodded. "Nothing you think happened? Nothing Shaw told you happened? Nothing Nolan says happened, I understand." "No."
You understand the words. I'm asking if you understand the consequence.
Dana's mouth tightened. "They'll know the detention continued after verification." "Yes, they'll know Shaw kept the credential after confirmation."
"Yes, they'll know Nolan tore the purse, if you tell them."
Dana looked at the blank paper. Camille finally gave her the number. Dana wrote it down and left. Across the hall, Nolan sat at Shaw's desk with the preliminary report open on a computer. Shaw stood behind him. Change lunged to move rapidly toward the officer. Nolan typed, "That sounds weaker. It sounds defensible." She did move. "Because I opened the purse." Shaw looked at him. "Do not write the motive for her." Nolan leaned back. "Dana's going to screw us. She's going to write something." "She already challenged me twice." Shaw walked to the window. "You should have stopped at the pharmacy bag." Nolan stared at him.
You authorized the purse. I authorized a search based on what you told me.
"I told you everything. No. You told me she was interfering." "She was. You didn't tell me Cole questioned probable cause." Nolan stood. "That's it? Now this is mine?" Shaw turned. "This became yours when you tore open the bag." Nolan laughed once. "And yours when you told me to open it." Neither man spoke. For the first time, they understood the same fact at the same time. There was no version of the story where only one of them was exposed. Shaw lowered his voice. We keep the focus on her conduct. Nolan nodded slowly. She concealed the credential.
Yes, she used legal knowledge to intimidate officers.
Yes, she interfered with the search. Yes, she attempted to leverage her federal position after the discovery. Shaw considered that. Careful. Why? Because the camera shows who opened the credential. Nolan's jaw tightened. Shaw continued. Say her statements implied professional consequences. Nolan typed it. What about Cole? Leave her out unless necessary. Why? Because the more people you name, the more people get to contradict you. Nolan looked up at him. That was not something a lieutenant said when he believed the report was clean. Shaw realized it too late. The door opened. Dana stood there. She had heard the last sentence. Shaw's face went still. What? Dana held a department phone. The Department of Justice duty officer called back. Shaw walked toward her. I told you all communication goes through me. They asked for the officer who made the verification request. You don't work for them, no? Dana looked at Nolan. I work here. Shaw took the phone from her. Go finish your report. Dana did not move. Shaw repeated it now. She turned and walked away. Shaw put the phone to his ear. This is Lieutenant Victor Shaw. The voice on the other end was calm. Shaw listened. His expression changed slightly. No, she is not under arrest. A pause. She is being detained while we investigate the circumstances surrounding the stop.
Another pause. No, we have not alleged that the credential itself is counterfeit.
Nolan stopped typing. Shaw looked toward the hallway. We have concerns about how it was used during the encounter. The voice on the phone spoke for longer this time. Shaw's jaw tightened. I understand. Another pause. No, you do not have consent to access the body camera system. His face changed. Why would you need preservation? Nolan stood. Shaw listened again. No recordings have been deleted. The room seemed smaller. He glanced at Nolan. No, I'm not saying anyone intends to delete anything. Another pause. Shaw's voice lowered. Send whatever request you believe is appropriate. He ended the call. Nolan stared at him. What did they say? Shaw did not answer immediately. What did they say? They're sending a preservation notice. For what? All recording, dispatch traffic, property logs, and reports connected to the stop. Nolan's face tightened. Because she called them? She didn't. Then who? Shaw looked toward the hallway where Dana had disappeared. Neither man said her name. That evening, Camille was allowed one monitored phone call. She did not call her father first. That decision hurt. She called the Department of Justice Security Duty Desk through the official number Dana had already used.
This is Camille Reeves. Employee number ending 847.
The duty officer verified her. Camille spoke carefully.
I am not requesting intervention in the local criminal process.
The officer asked whether she was safe. Yes. Are you restrained? No. Have they seized your credential? Yes. Personal phone? Yes. Government equipment? No. That answer mattered. Camille had left her secure work phone locked at her Washington residence because she was on a personal trip. Nothing in the purse had given Fairbrook access to classified files, investigative systems, or active case material. Her title was powerful. Her evidence was ordinary. That was exactly how she wanted it. I want preservation, she said. The duty officer confirmed that a notice had already been initiated. Do not contact county leadership beyond what is required to preserve records. There was a pause.
Deputy Attorney General, they are holding a senior Justice Department official.
I know we can escalate. No, another pause. Camille continued. If local authorities decide to release me because they verified my identity, that is their decision. If they continue because they believe they have lawful grounds, I want those grounds documented. The duty officer understood. You're separating your office from the incident.
Yes, that may slow this down, I know.
It was the second time that day Camille knowingly chose the harder route. This time she understood the cost before she made it. After the call, she asked to contact her father. Shaw refused. You had your call. Camille looked at him. That first call was related to the seizure of federal credentials. You don't get two because the first one was inconvenient.
My father is recovering from a stroke. He is expecting me.
Shaw's face did not change. You can contact family after we finish. Camille stared at him. This time she did not argue. Shaw almost seemed disappointed. He left. Camille looked at the camera in the corner. Now the record contained something she had not planned. A consequence that had nothing to do with rank. Across the station, Dana finished her supplemental report. She wrote that Camille had complied with instructions to exit the vehicle. She wrote that the pharmacy confirmed the prescription belonged to Camille's father. She wrote that Dana had questioned the legal basis for searching the purse before the search occurred. She wrote that Camille stepped forward only after Nolan began pulling at the jammed interior zipper. She wrote that Nolan tore the seam. Then she reached the final paragraph. She typed, "Federal credential was discovered only after the purse was damaged during the search." She stopped. The cursor blinked. Shaw appeared beside her desk. "Let me see it." Dana did not move the keyboard. He read over her shoulder. His face tightened at the pharmacy verification, tightened again at her objection. Then he reached the sentence about the purse. Change damaged during the search to opened during the search. Dana looked at him. The bag tore. The interior seam opened. It ripped. Cole. She turned in her chair. It ripped. Shaw lowered his voice.
You want to make this a fight about vocabulary?
No, then use neutral language. Dana looked back at the screen.
Neutral isn't the same as inaccurate. Shaw stared at her. For a long moment, the station sounds carried around them. A printer, a door buzzer, someone speaking at the booking desk. Then Shaw said, "If you submit that report as written, you are saying your senior officer conducted an unlawful search and your lieutenant allowed it." Dana's hands stayed on the keyboard. "I'm saying what I saw." "Think very carefully," she did. That was the point. Dana clicked submit. The report disappeared from the editing screen. Shaw's head snapped toward her. "What did you just do?" Dana stood. "I finished my report." At that exact moment, the department printer behind them started running. One page, then another, then 6 more. The desk officer picked up the first sheet. "Lieutenant?" Shaw turned. Across the top of the document, in heavy black type, was a formal preservation notice covering every recording, report, dispatch entry, property record, and internal communication connected to Camille Reeves's detention. Nolan stepped out of the hallway. "What is it?" Shaw did not answer. Dana looked at the growing stack of pages. Then the station phone rang. The desk officer answered, listened, and covered the receiver. "Lieutenant Shaw." Shaw did not move. "Who is it?" The desk officer swallowed. "County Council." "They said don't alter anything." "Don't delete anything. Don't revise anything already submitted." Nolan looked at Dana. Dana looked at Shaw. And for the first time since the stop began, the person with the least rank in the room had made the decision none of them could take back. By 8 the next morning, Fairbrook had stopped treating Camille's detention like a traffic mistake. The department released a public statement before it released her. It did not mention Nolan tearing open her purse. It did not mention the pharmacy verification. It did not mention that Dana had authenticated Camille's federal credential before Shaw continued the detention. Instead, it described an encounter involving a senior federal official who repeatedly invoked legal consequences while officers attempted to investigate suspected unlawful possession of medication and official credentials. Camille read the statement from the same interview room where she had spent most of the night. Shaw stood across the table. Nolan leaned against the wall. Dana was nowhere in sight. Camille lowered the paper. "You wrote this after confirming my credential." Shaw folded his hands. "The department has an obligation to explain why you were detained."
No, you have an obligation to explain what happened.
"That's what this does. It says I invoked my position."
You implied professional consequences. I told Officer Nolan to be careful about the record before he knew my title.
Nolan pushed away from the wall. "You knew exactly what you were doing." Camille turned toward him. "Yes, I was telling you not to lie." His mouth tightened. Shaw raised a hand. "This is going nowhere." Camille looked at him. "Then why am I still here?" Shaw placed a second document on the table. "This is a notice that the department is referring your conduct for review concerning obstruction, interference with officers, and possible misuse of federal status during a local investigation." Camille read the first paragraph, then the second. The wording was careful. No arrest warrant, no formal criminal charge. Just enough accusation to keep the story alive. "You verified my credential," she said. "That doesn't answer how you used it." "I didn't use it." Nolan found it.
You withheld your identity while challenging officers with knowledge unavailable to an ordinary motorist.
Camille looked up. "Knowledge unavailable to an ordinary motorist?" Shaw did not respond. "You mean knowing I can refuse consent?" "I mean repeatedly attempting to control the scene, by asking why I was stopped, by making statements designed to intimidate officers." Camille pushed the notice back. "Which statement?" Nolan answered, "You should be careful what you write next." "I said that after you had already searched my vehicle." Sounds like a threat to me. Camille looked directly at him. You want it to sound like one. Nolan stepped forward.
You think because you work in Washington, you get to walk into a small town and decide everybody here is stupid?
Camille's expression changed. There it was, not racism spoken loudly. Not some movie villain confession. Something more familiar. Resentment dressed as local pride. I didn't walk into your town, Camille said. You pulled me over. Nolan opened his mouth. Shaw cut him off. Enough. Camille turned to Shaw. You know your statement leaves out the verification call. We're still documenting the timeline. Dana documented it last night. Shaw's eyes hardened.
You've spoken to Officer Cole enough?
That sounds like another thing you should be careful about putting on the record.
Nolan laughed once. See? Camille did not look at him. Shaw leaned forward. You want the truth? Fine. You had a credential that could change how every officer on that road behaved, and you deliberately withheld it.
The answer surprised both men.
Camille continued. Shaw sat back. So you admit it. I admit I chose not to use my title to obtain treatment every citizen should receive without one. Nolan shook his head. That's a speech. No. That's why we're here. Shaw's voice dropped. You could have ended this in 5 minutes. Camille met his eyes, so could you? The room went still. She pointed toward Nolan. He had a clean license, clean registration, a verified prescription, no impairment, no contraband, and an officer telling him the purse search was questionable. Then she looked at Shaw. You arrived with all of that information, and had a choice. Shaw's expression did not move. You told him to open the purse. His jaw tightened. Camille continued. The credential didn't create your problem. Your decisions before you saw it did. Nolan stepped toward the table. And everything after? Camille looked at him. That's what I'm still trying to understand. For the first time, Shaw's eyes shifted. It was small. Camille saw it anyway. She leaned back.
You're not afraid the credential proves who I am?
Neither man spoke. You're afraid the timeline proves who you were after you knew. Nolan looked towards Shaw. That reaction answered more than either of them intended. Shaw stood. This meeting is over. Camille stayed seated. Am I free to leave? Yes. Is my credential being returned?
Yes. My phone? Yes. My purse? Yes. Are you withdrawing the obstruction referral?
No. Camille nodded. Then give me a copy. Shaw stared at her. You really think paper saves you? No. Camille stood.
I think people make themselves very clear when they believe paper belongs to them.
She walked out without waiting for an answer. The counterattack worked better than Camille expected. By noon, local news sites had the department's statement. By evening, a national political blog had turned the stop into a fight between Washington power and small-town policing. The headline did not call Camille a victim. It called her a senior Justice Department official accused of threatening local officers. The distinction mattered. At work, Ethics Council did exactly what Camille had asked them to do. They separated her from everything. No investigative calls. No contact with Fairbrook officials. No access to any internal review touching her detention. No ability to direct the preservation process. Her title had finally become relevant, and the first thing it did was remove her from the fight. She sat in her Washington office while 2 career attorneys explained the restriction. One of them said, "This protects the integrity of the review." Camille nodded. "I agree." The other attorney watched her.
You also understand that you cannot publicly respond using departmental resources.
Even if Fairbrook continues making statements.
Yes, and you should assume every public comment you make could become evidence.
Camille almost smiled. Now you sound like me. Neither attorney did. When they left, Camille stared at the closed door. For the first time since Nolan activated his lights, she had no control over what happened next. That bothered her more than she wanted to admit. Her office phone rang. She looked at the caller ID, her father. Camille let it ring twice before answering. "Dad, Samuel Reeves did not say hello. You missed dinner." "I know you missed dinner by 14 hours, I know." "And your solution was to send a stranger from your office to tell me you were safe." Camille closed her eyes. "I couldn't call you. You called Washington." "That was different, was it?" His voice was slower since the stroke, but the irritation behind it had not changed. Camille leaned back in her chair. "I was being detained. I figured that out when 2 government people showed up at my house before my daughter did. They were checking on you. I didn't need checking. You missed your medication pickup." Samuel went quiet. Camille realized the mistake as soon as she said it. When he spoke again, his voice was colder. "You picked it up?" "Yes. So I didn't miss anything. You did." Camille rubbed her forehead. Dad, no. Don't make me the reason you stayed in that station. She said nothing. Samuel continued, You do that.
Do what? You decide something is your responsibility, then you carry it until everybody around you has to live with the weight too.
Camille stared at the desk. I thought if I showed them who I was, they'd stop. That sounds useful. It would have hidden what they were willing to do. So? Camille looked up. So somebody without my title would have been treated worse. Samuel's answer came fast. And you decided the only way to prove that was to let them treat you worse. Camille had no response. Her father waited. That's not the same thing as being brave, Camille. The words landed harder than Nolan's accusations. She looked at the framed photograph on her desk. Samuel before the stroke, standing beside her at her law school graduation, younger and broader, pointing at her diploma like he had earned half of it. I thought the cameras would stop them, she said. Samuel's voice softened. There it is. What? You thought being right was enough? Camille breathed out. No, yes you did, she almost argued. Then she stopped. You're right. Samuel was quiet. Camille continued. I should have called for outside verification sooner. You should have done whatever kept you safe without helping them hide what they did. I didn't know how far Shaw would go, then say that. Camille looked toward the window. I didn't know. That's better. A small laugh escaped her. You've been waiting years to hear me say those words. Since you were 12. She smiled for the first time since the stop. Samuel said, You still coming for dinner? Tonight? No, Christmas. Camille laughed again. I'll be there in 2 hours. 1 dad, 1.5, deal. That conversation changed something Camille had not expected. She stopped thinking of the case as a test she had to personally finish. For the first time, she let other people carry the record. Dana carried more of it than anyone knew. 3 days after Camille's release, the independent preservation team obtained locked copies of the department's body camera files, dispatch traffic, report database, and telephone logs. The first review did not produce a dramatic hidden video of Nolan admitting anything. It produced something worse for him, a timeline. At 4:09, Nolan ran Camille's license. At 4:14, Dana arrived. At 4:19, the pharmacy confirmed Samuel Reeves's prescription information. At 4:26, Dana questioned the legal basis for searching the purse. At 4:31, Shaw arrived. At 4:38, Shaw authorized the purse search. At 4:42, Camille was handcuffed. At 5:06, Dana called the federal verification number. At 5:12, the duty officer confirmed Camille's credential. And at 5:18, Nolan opened the first draft of a report accusing Camille of attempting to leverage federal authority. The system had preserved the draft history when the notice locked the server. Investigators could see every change. Threatened officer became implied professional consequences. Lunge toward officer became moved rapidly toward officer. A sentence stating that the credential was suspected counterfeit disappeared 12 minutes after Dana's verification call. Then a new sentence appeared. Subject refused to disclose federal status during initial contact, creating investigative concern. It had been added after the status was already confirmed. The changes alone did not prove conspiracy. Then Dana's body camera supplied the missing context. Her camera had continued recording inside the station, while Shaw ordered her to leave federal verification out of her supplemental report until he decided how to classify the stop. It captured her refusal. It captured Shaw asking whether she was part of this department or part of her defense team. And later, while Dana stood outside Shaw's office, it captured part of the conversation between Shaw and Nolan. Not every word. Enough. We need one version of what happened. Then Shaw correcting himself. We need one accurate version that doesn't make this worse. Then Nolan. She used her position without identifying it. Then Shaw.
Yes.
The timeline changed the meaning of the entire stop. The first abuse happened because Nolan believed Camille was an ordinary driver he could pressure. The cover-up happened because he learned she was not. That was the second truth. The credential had not caused them to release her. It had caused them to start manufacturing a reason why their earlier conduct should look justified. Camille did not learn those details from her own department. Ethics rules still kept her out. She learned them 2 weeks later during an independent administrative hearing requested by the county after its insurer refused to defend the original report without a factual review. Camille attended as the complaining witness. Shaw sat across the room with counsel. Nolan sat 2 chairs away from him. Dana sat behind Camille. No uniforms that morning, no flashing lights, no roadside, Just a long table, several microphones, and the same people forced to say out loud what the record already showed. Nolan went first. He defended the stop. The vehicle crossed the line. How many times? An investigator asked. Nolan paused. At least once. Your original statement said twice. I was describing the overall driving pattern. The body camera records you telling Miss Reeves once. I may have misspoken later. The investigator moved to the prescription. After the pharmacy confirmed it belonged to her father, what crime were you investigating? Nolan looked toward his attorney. Possible possession issues and suspicious behavior. What suspicious behavior? She was unusually focused on procedure. Camille looked down at her hands. The investigator did not react. Knowing procedure is suspicious? No. The way she used it. How? She kept challenging lawful commands. Was she physically resistant? No. Did she threaten you? Nolan hesitated. She implied consequences. Before or after you discovered her federal credential? Nolan looked toward Shaw. Before. What exactly did she say? Nolan quoted Camille's warning about the record. The investigator nodded. So before you knew her title, you interpreted that as what? Nolan said nothing. The question came again. At the time she said it, what did you believe she was threatening you with? I didn't know. Then why did your report later describe the statement as an attempt to use federal influence? Nolan's face tightened because context changed. Camille looked up. The investigator leaned forward. That's the issue, Officer Nolan. Her statement didn't change. Your description did. Nolan turned slightly toward Camille. You wanted this. Camille's attorney started to object. Camille raised one hand. I'll answer. She looked at Nolan. I wanted you to stop. His face reddened. You could have shown the ID. Yes. You let me walk into it. Camille's eyes stayed on him. I told you not to search the purse. You knew what was inside. My own credential. You knew how it would look. No, officer. You knew how it looked after you saw it. Nolan leaned forward.
You think that makes you better than everybody in that town?
No, you people come in after the fact and judge decisions in seconds. Camille's voice stayed level. You had more than 1 second.
He stopped. You had my documents. You had the pharmacy verification. You had Dana questioning the search. You had Shaw standing beside you. You had me telling you no. She paused. And then you had the credential. Nolan said nothing. You had an opportunity to stop at every one of those points. His jaw worked. Camille finished. You chose not to. Shaw's testimony was more polished. He did not claim Camille was dangerous. He did not defend every choice. He argued that supervisors had to make decisions with incomplete information. In real time, he said, you don't get a clean timeline on a screen.
You get fragments. A driver is challenging officers.
Medication is in another person's name. Then a federal credential appears after the driver refuses to explain why she's resisting a search. My responsibility was to stabilize the scene. Camille listened. It was the strongest defense he had, and part of it was true. The investigator asked, why continue detention after federal verification? Shaw answered immediately, because verification of identity did not resolve the conduct preceding it. Why tell Officer Cole to omit verification from her report? I told her to wait until the classification of the incident was clear. Why? Because an incomplete verification note could misrepresent what we knew at the time. Dana shifted behind Camille. The investigator placed her submitted report on the table. Officer Cole included the exact time of the verification. Yes, was it accurate?
Yes, so what needed classification?
Shaw paused. The legal significance. Then why would the factual event be omitted? Shaw looked toward his counsel. The room waited. He finally answered. Because I was concerned the report would make it appear that we knowingly detained a verified federal official without cause. Nobody spoke. Shaw realized what he had said. The investigator did not rescue him.
You were concerned the accurate timeline would make the detention look improper.
Shaw's face hardened. I was concerned about context. Camille looked at him. That was the moment. Not the badge. Not the title. Not the federal seal. The second layer finally sat in the open. They had not continued because they still doubted who Camille was. They continued because they knew exactly who she was and needed the earlier decisions to survive contact with that fact. Shaw turned toward Camille.
You think you proved some grand theory about policing?
Camille shook her head. No. Then what did you prove? That Dana had a choice too. Shaw looked toward the younger officer. Dana held his gaze. Camille continued. She had less rank than everyone in that room. Shaw said nothing. And she made the decision you kept saying was impossible in the moment. For the first time, Shaw had no procedural answer. The hearing did not end with handcuffs. Nobody was dragged away. That would have been simpler. The county placed Nolan on unpaid suspension while an outside prosecutor reviewed possible false report and evidence tampering offences connected to the draft history. Shaw was removed from supervisory duty the same afternoon. A month later, he resigned before the county disciplinary board reached its final recommendation. His resignation did not stop the outside investigation. Dana received a formal reprimand for failing to intervene earlier during the roadside search. She accepted it. The same review found that her preserved report, verification call, and refusal to alter factual language prevented the department from rewriting the timeline after the fact. She stayed, not because Camille told her to, because Dana decided she could no longer use being junior as an excuse for silence. Several prior complaints involving Nolan were reopened, not because Camille ordered it. She could not. The review began after investigators found the same pattern in older reports: lawful objections repeatedly described as interference, searches expanding after minor suspicions disappeared, and supervisors relying on vague language rather than specific conduct. Some complaints were sustained, some were not. That mattered to Camille. Accountability was not supposed to mean assuming every accusation was true. It meant actually checking. The county also changed its reporting policy. Supervisors could no longer direct officers to remove verified factual events from reports because their legal significance was unsettled. Body camera preservation became automatic whenever an officer reported discovering government credentials during a contested search. None of those reforms made national television. Camille preferred it that way. 6 weeks after the stop, she drove back to Fairbrook. This time, she made it to Samuel's house before dinner. He opened the front door before she could knock. "You're early." 4 minutes. "I was going to call the police." Camille stared at him. Samuel smiled. "Too soon, way too side." On the kitchen table sat 2 plates, a bottle of his medication, and Camille's repaired purse. She stopped. "You fixed it?"
I know a guy. You know a guy who repairs leather?
"I'm retired, I know everybody." Camille picked up the purse. The torn seam had been stitched cleanly, not hidden. Repaired, Samuel watched her. "You keeping it?" "Yes." "Why?" She looked at him. "Because replacing it would be easier." Samuel nodded. "That sounds like my daughter." Camille set the purse down.
No, he raised an eyebrow. She pulled out a chair.
"The old version of your daughter would have said the damage didn't matter." Samuel sat across from her. "And the new version?" Camille looked at the repaired seam. "She's pretending something didn't hurt, isn't the same as being strong." Samuel studied her for a moment. Then he pushed one of the plates toward her. "You finally learned something useful in Washington." She smiled. "Fairbrook, don't ruin the joke. They ate."
No reporters, no federal motorcade, no officers waiting outside to apologize.
Camille did not need them. The strongest result of the case was not that a police officer had torn open the wrong woman's purse and discovered the Deputy Attorney General of the United States. It was what happened after everyone knew. Nolan had a chance to admit he had pushed the stop too far. He wrote around it. Shaw had a chance to correct him. He tried to control the timeline. Dana had a chance to protect herself by staying quiet. She submitted the report anyway, and Camille had a chance to use her title as a shortcut. Instead, she learned that refusing the shortcut did not mean she had to carry every consequence alone. Weeks later, when investigators returned her credential case, Camille placed it back inside the repaired purse. The gold seal was unchanged. The title beneath her photograph was unchanged. But she no longer thought of it as the thing that had turned the case. It had only exposed the difference between how the officers behaved before they knew who she was and how they behaved after. The evidence did the rest. The pharmacy call, Dana's report, the verification timestamp, the preserved body camera files, the report edits, the decisions made when each person believed they still had room to change the story. Nolan had once told Camille that she did not get to give orders on his scene. In the end, she never needed to. She only needed the record to survive long enough for everyone else to hear what he had chosen to do,